All right, everyone. Gary Johnson is running for the Senate. You may not have heard of this because the lamestream media doesn't want to talk about it. They're terrified that he's actually going to get in there and deny the Democrats a spot and be funny. Rand Paul has endorsed him. Rand Paul, of course, being a Republican. Here's the thing, though. Their ideologies have quite a bit of similarity. Rand Paul's not a neocon. He's a paleocon-leaning Republican. Gary Johnson's not a libertarian. He's a paleocon-leaning lino, essentially, a libertarian in name only. With the exception of Borders, which, he's not going to do anything on anyway, I like most of his platforms. He's like, weed should be legal. No, I don't want to go to war. Hey, I like Trump's tax cuts. It's a great idea. Why don't we also reduce spending? Yeah, I want someone like that in the Senate. He'd probably be working with the Rand Pauls. He, ironically, despite all of his never Trump bluster, he's closer ideologically, I think, to elements of Trumpism than he would be, certainly the Democrats, on most issues, and I think most of the neocons. He might end up partnering with that sort of Trumpite core. A lot of that, I think, when he badmouths Trump, it's sort of to get attention. Well, let him do that then. Who cares? If he wants to run as a never Trumper independent, so be it. I would endorse him too. I'm endorsing Gary Johnson for the Senate. Again, never Trumper side or open borders or whatever aside, and I'll tell you why. Number one, it would be hilarious to see Gary Johnson, who frequently gets into verbal squabbles with other people, attempt to browbeat the rest of the Senate. To tell them like it actually is, to give them the treatment that they deserve for doing nothing. I think he would. I think he'd be standing with Rand on that, and essentially Rand Paul would have a clone in the Senate who would have an L after his name. Or maybe, I can't remember, is he running as a libertarian or an independent? I don't know. I think the New Mexico's government's trying to make it hard for him to run at the moment. They're trying to stall him out because they're terrified he's going to win. Because he's been a governor in that state already several times. By all means, he was considered a popular governor. He probably could go back and run for governor or something again. I don't know, do they have term limits in New Mexico for that? Probably should have done that too. I think Gary Johnson would do a great job. And I trust him to this extent. I think he's genuine in his views. I disagree with him completely on Borders. I don't see it as a libertarian position that he has. I see it as a far left position. Ultimately, I do. I don't think he's pragmatic on that. I think sometimes when he was giving that one interview there with the reporter, and he started talking baby talk and talking about how if he got up on the debate stage, he'd win, even if he was basically not saying anything at all. I think that his idea of humor sometimes falls flat, but he may have been higher than balls at the time. And by the way, weed is legal in D.C. Like, the reason he didn't run for the Senate before is probably he's like, well, if I go to D.C., I can't smoke there. I can smoke here. Nobody gives a fuck. I'm Gary Johnson. I can go anywhere and smoke a bong, but not in D.C. Now it's legal there. So he's like, I could make this work. No, I think he'd be good in the Senate. Would I want Gary Johnson president of the United States? No. But look, nationwide, there were plenty of places outside of New Mexico, his home state, where he got at least low double-digit support. He has national recognition. He's got a fairly positively seen brand name of sorts. He did drag the Libertarian Party up. I think he failed on multiple measures and could have done twice as well. In fact, I think he could have endangered the ability of the two-party system to continue functioning. But in an off election like this, midterms, it's entirely possible he could do it. He's got name recognition, especially there. He's a positive individual. People might see him as inept. They might see him as a little kooky, but they don't see him as a bad guy. I wish him well. I would endorse him. Yes, if you're in New Mexico, I would encourage you to vote for Gary Johnson for the Senate. And some people say, well, he can't win. It's splitting the vote. You're giving it to the Democrats. Fuck all that shit. By that token, because of his name recognition alone, these other people are splitting the vote by running too. That's not how elections work. That's a Democratic talking point with regards to like Bernie Sanders fans or people who voted third party. The damn Green Party with its, 10 votes stole the election from us is essentially their whiny line. Don't be like that. No. And it's not about partisanship anyway. Look, Trump has just as much trouble with his own fellow Republicans as the Democrats. If you're like a Trump fan in New Mexico worried about giving it to the Democrats, who fucking cares? The Republicans not going to work with him either. Gary Johnson, for all of his never Trump bravado, I think would ultimately end up standing with Rand. He'd probably get introduced to Trump, quiet down fairly quickly, and be part of the populist kids club. He'd probably be a pro-Trumper after not that long. I'm not joking. I think that that's what would happen. I think he would see the wisdom of doing that as opposed to standing with what else is he going to do? side with a bunch of liberal Democrats because of the border situation? No, because they want to raise taxes and stuff. And he did speak out in favor of the tax cuts that Trump made. He simply wanted to carry it further and do spending cuts. I agree with him. I think that is one thing I disagree with Trump on. I think we do need massive spending cuts. At the very least, we need a spending freeze like Ronald Reagan did. You do that for a couple of years, let GDP catch up to the size of government, no more problem. The debt does begin to decrease significantly. The year-over-year deficit will decrease down to a much lower level. Keep it up for a second term, we'd probably be running a surplus. Which means that the next president would piss that away in the form of a shitty stimulus like George W. did. But no, I think Gary Johnson would do a reasonably good job in the Senate. He's not as far as on the federal level, like as a president, I think he'd do a terrible job. I think he wouldn't make a good president. But in the Senate, I think he's exactly what we need. We need purgatives within the structures of Congress. We need firebrands and people who are not afraid to tell it how it is and say, look, you're fucked up. My fellow senators are fucking morons sometimes. Look, this is a moronic bill. No, that shouldn't be done. Yeah, by the way, the Patriot Act is still in... We've still got a police state right now. Let's get rid of it. I think it'd be wonderful. I think it'd be great to have Gary Johnson there to actually advocate for reducing budgets instead of doing what the Republicans typically do, which is, hey, we want to lower your taxes by 0.1%. We want to eliminate this one regulation out of 10 million that applies to this industry. Wonderful fiscal conservatives we have in Congress among the GOP. No, not really. You've got Trump, Rand, Amash, and now you can have Gary Johnson too. No, I think that's an improvement. By the way, the pro-Trump candidates washed the clocks of the non-Trumpers in the last round of primaries. It was wonderful to see. Maybe he can get more cooperation, but you've got to understand, Trump is essentially a Manhattan Democrat. He just happens to be a slightly more fiscally conservative, old guard, like JFK-style Democrat. He is socially liberal while fiscally conservative. He's what the Democrats were in their heyday when they stood for something that was actually decent and worth voting for. It's been a while, by the way. Therefore, Trump ends up becoming this weird quasi-Republican. He's going to get along with a Gary Johnson, I think, or a Rand Paul, much more than most members of his own party. In New Mexico, don't worry about splitting votes or whatever. Don't listen to any fucking polls, because we know they're bullshit. The political structure there is trying to preclude him from having a proper campaign, getting on ballots and so forth, in order to try to stymie the fact that it would begin to look bad for the two-party system if someone from a third party, not just independent Bernie from Vermont that nobody cares about because he's basically a Democrat anyway, I mean an actual independent who's a maverick on certain views, it would begin to make the two-party system look weak. And also the Democrats really want to hold everything in New Mexico. It's becoming more blue over time. If the Libertarians take it, my goodness, that'd be great. Then he might argue for campaign finance reform, which is something that none of the people in Congress talk about anymore. When's the last time they brought up Citizens United outside of the context of a presidential election? It's been a while, hasn't it? Been quite some time. In fact, it's been about a decade. They very quickly shut up because they realized how much money they made. I think we need someone in there who will vote against any wars, who will vote against any spending increases, while not being a Republican or a Democrat, and be willing to tell the rest of the Senate, fuck yourself. That's what Gary Johnson will be elected for. I think he'd do a good job. We need a Senator Alex Jones at some point. I'm serious. He should run for Congress or as a governor or something. He's got the name recognition, got the national platform already. Why not? We need people like that. We need people from the alt media. We need people, literally YouTubers and bloggers, people who are well-known online, who have massive, sometimes worldwide audiences, to start running for office. A creator's block that is extended to the political world. Be far more libertarian on speech issues. Going to be far more technologically aware. I think it might be good considering we face hacking attacks by China every single day. That's the sort of, we need new blood in the Senate and in the House, definitely. In other countries, they could use it too. I eagerly await the day when some small African nation is run by the Internet Party or something, like the Pirate Party members or something. You can think what you want about certain elements of their quasi-communistic platform, but some of it's fairly good. No, I endorse Gary Johnson, yeah, absolutely. I'll stand with Rand on this one. I think that Rand Paul is the sane man of the Senate still. He always has been. I hope that Rand runs for life. He's one of the few people who could be like a perennial candidate and actually do a good job. That's about all. Peace out.